Currently, we've been testing our HTML in Replit, but there's actually a bunch of tools built into the browser to make our lives easier as we're doing web development. There's tools to view the actual HTML elements of a page rather than the styled web pages. There's tools to test out JavaScript, which we'll be using a lot in later units. There's tools to test out different screen sizes, which helps us develop both mobile and desktop applications, and there's a whole lot more. So let's try out all of these tools together now. Everyone, please open up the Chrome web browser and go to google.com. Go ahead and right-click anywhere on the page. From the drop-down menu, look all the way down at the bottom and click on the word Inspect. This opens up our developer tools. Yours might be on the top, left, right, or bottom of your screen by default. Mine is on the right. For now, let's move all of our developer tools to the right side of the screen together. To do that, click on the three dots icon in the top right of the developer tools near the gear icon and the X icon. Then click the Dock to Right button. If yours was docked to the bottom of the screen, for example, you would go find those three dots, hover over the options until you find the Dock to Right option, and click on it. There's a lot of stuff going on in the developer tools, so before we get into that, we're going to test one other way of opening up the developer tools. Go ahead and close them by clicking the X button in the top right corner of your developer tools. Then click on the three dots in the top right corner of your browser. If you're using a Microsoft Windows or Linux computer, this should work fine. If you're on a Mac, the three dots might be in a different location, or if you don't see three dots anywhere, look along the top side of your web browser for a button called Develop and click on that instead. Everyone, now move down through the menu until you find the More Tools section. At the bottom of that pop-out menu, there is a button labeled Developer Tools. Click on that and it will also open up your developer tools. The developer tools may look a little different compared to the last time if it's started on a different tab automatically. And heads up, from now on, I will be referring to the developer tools as Dev Tools. It's a little shorter and easier to say. First, go ahead and drag your dev tools halfway across the screen so that we have more room to work with. Now let's talk about the different tabs of the dev tools. The Elements tab shows us all the HTML elements that make up our web page. We can hover over elements to see their location on the page. We can also click on elements to see all the CSS styles that have been applied to them. Additionally, we can open up elements to view their nested content. Right-clicking on an element opens up a drop-down menu with a bunch of options for editing that element. We won't test all of these options now, but you can see from the menu that we can do things like add or remove attributes, duplicate the element, delete the element, cut it, copy it, and more. These changes will only last until we refresh the web page. After we refresh the web page, all of our changes disappear. For example, if I delete this bottom bar, and now it's gone from my screen, and then refresh the page, it's now back. So really, you're only editing the local copy of the web page that's in your web browser. You're not editing it for everyone that's using the website right now. That would be pretty messed up if you could change the web page in real time as other people were using it. But now that we know a little bit about HTML and the developer tools, we could use it to screw with our friends. For example, go ahead and edit the HTML of your bank account. You can send a screenshot to your friends pretending you're an evil mastermind with $1 million in your bank. It won't actually change the real numbers in your bank account, but it's a fun trick. And honestly, this is how a lot of the business gurus that you see on YouTube do it. They'll edit the HTML of their bank account or e-commerce store dashboard. They'll take a photo in a rented Lamborghini, all trying to convince you to pay $10,000 to attend their event or conference or shady stuff like that. Okay, enough ranting. At the bottom of this window, you can see the console. This is where any web page errors will print out. We can also write JavaScript directly in the console. However, we'll save that for the next unit on JavaScript. The console also has its own tab. You can search through any messages in the console by typing in the filter box. There are currently none showing. You can also open and close the console sidebar, which has a list of filters in it for all messages. There's the user messages filter, which shows messages you told your code to print out. We'll learn to do that in the JavaScript unit. The errors filter, which shows error messages that would come from broken code. The warnings filter, which shows messages that come from code that might be incorrect or might be deprecated. By deprecated, we mean code that is no longer supported in most web browsers. The info filter, which you can think of as pretty much the same thing as regular user messages for now, and the verbose filter, which you can also think of as pretty much the same thing as regular user messages for now. Now again, there are no errors here on this page because google.com was coded properly, so nothing is showing up in the console. If we have any messages in the console that we'd like to remove, we can hit the circle with a line through it button to clear the console. For example, if I type some characters in here and hit enter, I can then clear that console. On to the Sources tab. The Sources tab shows us all the files that are loaded on the web page in the left sidebar. This includes the HTML file for the page, any CSS files for the page, any images for the page, video, audio, and things like that. If we click on one of the files, it will show up in the center. Clicking on the two curly braces down at the bottom can make these files easier to read. It will spread any code out nicely over multiple lines. Finally, the right sidebar helps us fix errors in our JavaScript. We will cover that later in the JavaScript unit. Now for the Network tab. The Network tab shows us all of the network requests and responses that were made when we visited this web page. Network requests and responses are communication between our web browser and the web server that gave us the copy of the web page. This communication can include downloading files, images, data, and also uploading data. For example, when you visit facebook.com, you're downloading the web page, but when you log in, your browser is sending Facebook the login information. So this doesn't only show downloads, it shows two-way communication. You can watch this communication in real time by refreshing the web page with this tab open. There's a bunch of other things that the Network tab can do, but we're going to skip them for now. We'll learn a lot more about this tab and how the network requests actually work in future units. The Performance tab can help us find any problems with our web page performance. For example, maybe some animations aren't working correctly because they require more math calculations than our web browser and computer can handle. This tab would help us diagnose that problem. We'll come back to it and demonstrate its usage in later units of the course. The Memory tab is similar to the Performance tab in that it can help us diagnose problems with our web pages. We'll come back to it in later units after we learn JavaScript. The Application tab can show us all the information that the web page has stored in our browser. This would be things like cookies, which are used for tracking web page visitors. We'll learn more about this tab and cookies in future units. The Security tab can help us diagnose any security problems with the web page. We won't need to worry about this until much later in the course. Now click on the two arrows to view additional tools. The Lighthouse tab is used for generating a Lighthouse report. This is a report that audits and judges the performance and accessibility of our website. It will suggest improvements to make our web pages load faster and also to make it more user-friendly, especially for people that use alternative web page navigation tools like screen readers because they're visually impaired. Again, click on the three arrows and click on the Recorder tab. The Recorder tab is experimental, meaning that the Chrome browser team is still working on it and it is unfinished. We won't cover it in this course. Again, click on the two arrows and click on Performance Insights. Similar to the Recorder tab, the Performance Insight tab is experimental and we won't cover it in this course. A couple more buttons and then we're done learning about the DevTools. On the far left-hand side of your DevTools, there's a button. This is our Inspector tool. If we click on this and then click anywhere on the page, it will show us which HTML element we've clicked on. Next to the Inspector button, there's a Device Simulator button. If you click on this, you can mimic different screen sizes to test out your web page on mobile screens, on tablet screens, on laptop screens, larger laptop screens, desktop screens, so on and so forth. This will be useful for us throughout the entire course. Finally, by clicking on the gear icon on the far right side of the DevTools, you can change many of the settings of the DevTools. We're going to leave all of these as default throughout the course. You're welcome to play around with them on your own time. That's it for the DevTools. Take a break if you need it, and go have fun editing some of the HTML of your bank accounts.